You know, they always say there's a comic or an actor's actor. If you ask coaches about Chris Peterson, you ask the Nick Sabans, the Urban Meyer of the world. Chris Peterson is at the top of the list. Fox Sports college football analyst, 14 years, Boise State and Washington, and he is now joining us on the show. I don't want to take any shots at Jake Browning. He was your guy.
You better not.
It's great to see you. So Joel Klatt was on the show this week, and I grew up in the Northwest, so I went to Husky games and still have friends, and Jen Cohen just came down here to run USC. I watch as much Washington as I can, and a few years ago, you had a team that faced Bama and Ohio State. You got them really good very quickly. When Washington's got the right coach, they win. Neuheisel, Don James, they have him now. The story, though, is this offense and this quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. He was a transfer from Indiana. I didn't see much. I YouTubed him. I had no idea. I mean, you tell me what you see. His accuracy, and they don't think and dunk.
Yeah. Well, I think he surprised everybody except for one guy, Kalen DeBoer. See, this is the second year that all these kids have Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb's offensive system. But it's really the fourth year, in my opinion, that Michael Penix has it. See, in 2019, Kalen DeBoer was the OC at Indiana. He left to go to Fresno. Nick Sheridan, who's on his staff there, basically ran the same system with Penix. And so now you're really kind of going on to some version of the fourth year iteration of this offense, and it is fun to watch. If you haven't seen
it's a blast.
They have a lot of talent. There's two NFL tackles. I mean, they have some good players on that team right now.
Yeah, and Mike Penix, he's a lefty. How do you coaches look at lefties?
Are you asking me with Kellen Moore? I mean, are you kidding me? Like, I love lefties.
Okay.
You know?
I grew up with Steve Young. I love all those guys, too. Okay, so let's talk Deion Sanders. I was, when it first happened, the first minute, I'm like, that's weird. And then I'm like, and I remember I called a couple friends, and I'm like, Colorado has always struggled in a Broncos city, a pro sports area, of being relevant. And I'm like, well, Deion's going to make him relevant. He's also a great salesman. Are you surprised, not that he's winning, but how efficient? He turned over 75% of his roster. The first series, they looked like they'd been there for years. Are you a little surprised by it?
Shocked. Now, let me say this. When he first got hired there, Rick George, the AD, I tipped my hat because I'm like, that is beautiful. Like, no matter what they were doing, they're relevant. Like, everybody's going to pay attention, and that's what you want. And then they come out the first three games and win them all. And
look good.
And look good. It's wild. I mean, it's been so impressive. I think that's really the model when you think about it.
What do you mean?
In college football, I think that the head coach, if you can be the face of the program, and this is a famous guy that's got this football history and background in NFL,
and great in front of a camera.
Oh my gosh, who's better than him? So you do that. You hire really good coaches, and it's just all about recruiting. So who's going to recruit better than Deion Sanders going down, with the little that they've produced so far?
Right.
I mean, it's a beautiful model. Like, that's where I think it is. You think Coach Prime is watching a ton of film? He doesn't have time for that. He's doing interview after interview, promoting this program, and he's got really good coaches, and it's been really impressive to watch.
Shedeur Sanders is his son, and we were talking about this week, is that I was always like, when Matt Leinart stayed in college, it was great for SC fans, but I thought, boy, you'll never get that money back. You could get hurt. But, NIL, he could make, it kind of changes the game. If you don't like who looks like they're going to have the number one pick, you don't trust ownership, you can almost make more for a year with NIL in college.
Well, there's no question. NIL has changed everything. I just go around the teams. We talk about Washington, and I know there's a bunch of guys playing there that probably would not be playing there right now had NIL not be existing right now. And so it's changed everything. And so, with the mojo that Colorado has, that collective, that booster collective, I'm sure is going to continue to grow, and they're going to be able to, buy some good players.
Somebody said this years ago to me, that it's impossible for Stanford, Notre Dame, and Northwestern to all be great at the same time. And their theory was they're so academic leaning. There is a finite number of elite high schoolers that can get into these great schools. So Northwestern's a bit down. Stanford is rebuilding. And I don't know if that's the case, but it does feel like, and you were on the recruiting trail, when I watched Notre Dame by adding Hartman against Ohio State, I would have said 6 years ago, there's Ohio State doesn't want 90% of their players. But I've watched Notre Dame, and Hartman just feels like kind of the lubricator to all of it. I think Notre Dame's got really good players. I saw him play Georgia a couple years ago, and I'm like, I'm not sure. Georgia's a little faster. Notre Dame looks bigger. Do you think they have a shot against Ohio State this weekend?
I absolutely do. I love Sam Hartman. He's a 6-year player in college football. I mean, what he did at Wake Forest, I've been such a fan of that program and Dave Clawson, so I follow those guys.
They get the most out of their stuff.
They really do. He's one of the best coaches in the country. And so I've watched him. I mean, he threw for like 13,000 yards, 110 touchdowns, and now he's going to Notre Dame to finish off his last year.
Right.
And so the transfer portal, NIL, has changed everything. That's why he's there. And so he's given that team this calming influence that now we have the quarterback. They've always had pretty good players in the last handful of years, but the quarterback, that elite quarterback, and I think Notre Dame feels so confident with that.
Yeah.
I think that playing at Notre Dame with Sam Hartman, Estime, the running back, I think is really good. This is going to be a fabulous game. I still think at the end of the day, Ohio State has too much talent.
I do. They can't quite get their O-line right. So, and I think a lot of this is transfer portal. So you lose a guy graduates, you bring two in, you don't have preseason games like the NFL, and you have limited number of hours. I've watched good teams. O-lines are bad. USC first couple of weeks. Texas opening week. And I do want to talk about, Sark. You replaced Sark.
I did.
And I like Sark. I thought you were known for your details, and I thought sometimes Steve, as a young coach, he's figured those out over the course of time. Everybody grows. He goes to Alabama and wins. I've always liked Sark because I think he's good for the sport. I think he's creative. He's a good recruiter. You followed him up at Washington. He left you with some nice players. If I remember, one of those receivers, Ross, if I recall.
Joe Ross.
Yeah. But we talked about this the other day with Joel Klatt. I said, what is it about Texas football? They break my heart every year.
Yeah.
And that we kind of disagreed on this, but I said, it's a glamour program. People pick your coaches off. A lot of distractions for players. Up at Washington or Boise, it's cold winters, not a lot to do. It is these, USC for years wanted you. You said, no, thanks. Texas, Miami. Do you think it's harder to coach in a big city, big media, more distractions? Because I feel like Texas, music, food, Austin, I feel like they've underachieved for most of my life.
Yeah, maybe so. But I think Mac Brown, was so special there and people didn't appreciate him like they should have. It's hard winning national championships no matter where you are. That's the thing that's so just amazing about what Nick Saban has done. I mean, it's just like me being in the game and seeing what he's done in this modern era. It just blows me away. But I think Sark is really, that program is primed and ready to, you hear Texas, and I give Emmanuel Acho a hard time all the time. Hey, Emmanuel's Texas back again? Again, Emmanuel. Right. But I think they are. This is year 3, and it's always kind of been, my thinking that year 3, like year 1 and 2, can be
culture
heavy
setting.
Lifting, getting your guys in, changing the culture. And year 3, here we go. And so last year, they lost some really close games that I think this year they're going to win. They got the quarterback. If you don't have an elite quarterback, we shouldn't even be talking about you in major college football right now. And all the really good programs that we're talking about have someone special, and Quinn Ewers, I think, is special.
I want to talk USC and Caleb Williams. Guys like me, we watch and we don't have the film you do, or we don't see the holes you do. And virtually, they always said that about baseball. When Barry Bonds was at his prime, had that wonderful 2-year stretch, they said it was like the only hitter in baseball history that didn't have a hole in his swing. There was literally nowhere to pitch him. Maybe on the hands, but nowhere to pitch him. When you look at Caleb Williams, he's not big. He runs around a lot. Is there anything you see if you were putting up a game plan? How would you stop it?
I am glad I'm not going against that guy. I truly think he's a generational talent. And I hate throwing that out because you hear that. But from what I see in college right now, I haven't seen anybody like this in the recent time at that position. I always think there's, a handful of things that you need to check the box when you're talking about elite quarterbacks. I think it's the arm strength. And I think I used to be very low on the arm strength thing. But now with RPOs, the movement that you're seeing out of these guys, the off-platform throws, like it used to be Tom Brady, Drew Brees hanging in that pocket, rhythm throws. Now it's Mahomes running around, and you need that core strength to zip that ball, weird off-angle throws. He's got that. He's got the athleticism. I think he's the hardest guy to tackle in college football.
There's something about, is he trunky? What is it? He never gets taken down with the first hit.
Yeah. It's called great genetics. I mean, he is so twitchy, and he's got the instincts like a running back. He really does. And, playing in the quarterback position, he's got more space. I think he's the hardest guy to tackle. He's accurate. And I always think that this accurate thing has to do with timing, pace, and placement of the ball. It's not just he's accurate. It's all those three things wrapped up.
Yeah, and he's accurate moving. He's accurate like left, right. Like some guy, I was talking to somebody the other day, a friend of mine's a former NFL scout, and he was talking about Justin Fields, and he said, I don't think he's naturally accurate. Now, you can work for that, but a lot of guys that move a lot, Caleb's always moving. And Lincoln's always moving him. Yeah. It's just his accuracy does not dip with movement. And in all your years of doing this, isn't that usually the case?
I think a lot of times these athletic guys like to be moving. They're used to throwing on the run, whether they're playing baseball and those type of things. Like that's more natural. It's not like supernatural to be trained to be in a confined space, hitch, rhythm, all these things. I mean, as a kid, you're running around throwing balls on, like it's more natural. And so that's what the game looks like to me.
Yeah. Jim Harbaugh's got his best football team. And Michigan has been mostly patient. They reduced his pay. Mostly patient. But Michigan's a big brand, and they've run off some coaches. Harbaugh's very unique in that I talked to a coach years ago that knew Jim, that had been in the staff, and they said he's really different. He is a walk-around coach. He's macro. He's coaching coaches. Don James, the legend at Washington, was known. He coached the coaches. Yep. I always was told if you walk down the hallway to see Don, he was like the Wizard of Oz. You were in trouble. You were in trouble as a player. But he coached coaches. I root for Jim because he's different. He gets criticized. He leads with his chin. But there's something about him I find attractive. What's your takeaway on Harbaugh on this Michigan team?
I think Jim Harbaugh is one of the greatest coaches that we've seen in college football recently. I really do. I remember, just a handful of years ago, they were talking about running him out of Michigan because he couldn't beat Ohio State.
Right.
Now they're flipped. The script is flipped. Now it's like, is Ryan Day good enough? I'm like, what are we talking about? These are two of the best coaches in college football. But I've, competed against Coach Harbaugh.
Yes, you have. What is it like?
I would tell you this. He's so unique. He's so different. But you follow that guy's track record from San Diego to Stanford to the Niners.
Immediately.
I mean, it's amazing because he does do things differently, but he knows how to win. I mean, what he did with Colin Kaepernick and played to his strengths, because I competed against Colin Kaepernick for 4 years at Boise State. So I saw this guy up close, and he was one of the hardest guys to defend. And I'm thinking, I don't know what kind of pro he's going to be because they don't run those styles of offense at all.
And Jim made it work.
Not only he made it work, they go to the Super Bowl, right? And so it was so impressive. And so everywhere he's been, that track record is there. This guy knows how to win football games as good as anyone I've ever been around.
It's funny. You become your personality. I can tell that you're a detailed person because if you watch Washington or Boise State, you guys were so good on the details. Even your trick plays were you're legendary for the trick play at Boise State. When I look at Harbaugh, he's kind of a physical guy. And he went to Stanford, and 2 years later, they pushed USC around. And I'm like, that to me, I think of Harbaugh, his teams are physical. he's confrontational human being. His teams are at best, like right now, they're more physical and confrontational at the point of attack than Ohio State.
I'll tell you a quick story. So when I first went to Washington, we're always trying to focus on ourselves, but Oregon would come up. USC would come up. I'd reference those guys. Finally, a couple of our players that had been there for a while came up and said, "Hey, Coach, you're talking about the wrong guys." And I'm like, huh? You need to be talking about Stanford. Because when you play those guys, you were in a football game and you're going to feel it the next week. And I'm like, huh? Well, fast forward a couple years. I mean, David Shaw had, got involved, but he was part of that whole thing. Those guys brought it. And they were so physical, just like you're talking about. And the roots of that come from Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. Okay, so I kind of like Ohio State over Notre Dame. I'm not sure Alabama, Ole Miss. I think Alabama maybe a step back year. Oregon, Colorado, let's go back. If Travis Hunter played, I think it would be different. He's a special player. Does Colorado have a shot? Oregon's pretty feisty, also have a pro quarterback.
No, they have no shot. But I said that they would not be 3-0 sitting here too. So what do I know? I'm going to tell you this. Deion Sanders, I love. That, to me, has been the most surprising thing about Colorado. I didn't realize he was that good.
Yeah.
The poise, the calmness, the confidence that he plays with.
The accuracy.
Oh, my gosh. He buys time. He's not really a runner, but he's athletic, that he's going to buy time, and he needs to, because I think the line at Colorado, I think that's the big weakness, and I think that's where they're going to get exposed on both sides, the offense and defensive lines, when we start playing these good teams. It's going to be very interesting 2 weeks for Colorado. This is going to be the great reset right here, because they're going to go into Autzen Stadium winning the Ducks have won 26 of 27 home games.
Oh no, it's the two places in the country that I've gone to and couldn't hear people next to me: the Swamp and Autzen. Now Husky Stadium's really loud, but they built that thing into the ground, and it is a hard place to play. Hard.
So, and then the craziness coming with Colorado and Coach Prime. I mean, it's going to be off the hook. That environment.
Can they compete though?
I
think Shador gives them a shot.
He does give them a shot. Because he is that good. I mean, I've been so impressed with him. But I do think, I almost think that Oregon is one of the teams. I know they're ranked pretty well, but I almost feel like Oregon's flying under the radar right now. That offense and Bo Nix, I'm a huge believer. So I think this is going to be a tremendous test for Colorado. And then the next week, the Trojans are rolling into Boulder. So we'll see what's really going on with the Buffaloes here in the next 2 weeks.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.